engineering, right? Because good research, unfortunately, does not come from, I have a vision, and then you develop forward. Sometimes you need to start backwards and see what is possible. All those that have been completing a PhD were starting with, this is the plan of research, this is what I want to do. But in 99.99% of all cases, at least in my experience, when you read a PhD, it is different from the original plan, at least in some aspects. There's always an element of backward engineering, and also in paper writing, it's a continuous process. So be flexible, be open to restructure and sharpen your research work. Once you have the methodology, the most important thing becomes the structure. Reader guidance, the red line through the paper that you're writing. Because this keeps people on track. This explains in a lucid way how you guide the reader. It's absolutely critical, because if the structure is not clear, the structure of the paragraph is not working, you just read. And most papers are short, 6,000, 8,000 words, including literature list, where you want to show that you are at full command of everything that has been written, or at least the most important parts that have been written. So you need to be really down to the point. The next step, good representation of the existing and relevant literature. That is obvious, right? Because we are dealing with academic research, so it's not just about the ideas or the methodology, structure, but it's also about showing that you know the literature, and importantly, where you are making a contribution to science. What is different in your paper than what is already out there? It's a critical point, because for reviewers, this is what they want to see. How do you extend the current basis of knowledge? And if you're not reinventing the wheel, which probably most of us we are not doing, because the wheel is already there for thousands of years, that's fine. But at least show how your vision, how your opinion is different than is discussed in the literature, or where you're contributing to the discussion. Right? Because if you don't have a third opinion, maybe you can support or put forward arguments supporting the position of one party or the other in the debate. That's perfectly fine. But make clear where you're contributing to the existing literature. Ideally, when we do research, we present something original, something new. We innovate in theory, we innovate in the topic. Things like this we can push forward. Of course, not each and every paper that we will be writing is completely new. Cannot be. Why? Because our day is simply 24 hours. Plus, our employer is happy to have us teach a lot, to do administrative work. Right? We also need time for holidays, relaxation, and research time is always too short. But still, we need to make the right pitch to point out what is new. Another point that cannot be stressed enough is clear language. Do not only think about refinement of wording. Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Professor. I just want to know about the originality or I mean, is it am I right when I think that originality is something different with the previous research or something
Yes.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's an excellent point.
Sorry,
If-
Professor, can you make the microphone?
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, sir. Indeed, that's the point that was just made by my dear colleague is if we take parts of the knowledge and discussions and apply them to Indonesia, is this truly novel and original? Yes, of course it is, because it is new to the framework in which you apply the knowledge. You can point this out. Don't expect the reviewers of your paper to think along with you. They might not. But if you write it clearly what is new and why you're relevant, they should not miss the point, right? And that is the important part. If you have clear language, it is easy or easier to point out why what you do is relevant, is new and novel. Even if it is not original, because you're not perhaps innovating in the legal or fiscal domain, because you apply existing rules and say whether they work or don't work, or describe problems, right? But still, you make an original contribution, and that is what you would like to stress. Yeah? And the important thing is, don't be modest, but don't overpromise. Do what you do, but don't try to be too modest. Yeah? Now, probably the most critical element is to have the right target. If you are preparing for a particular journal, go for it. Take the time, read a couple of papers that have been written in this journal on this topic. It takes a moment, but it gives you an idea of the writing style that is acceptable for the journal. It's a relevant exercise that helps you. Be also aware that sometimes the story and the pitch that you have is not adequate for the target. Be flexible. Look for the journal that is fitting your story. Don't just go for the top class A journal if the story that you have is not fitting, or the methodology or the approach. Be realistic and then see what is fitting. Because there are many journals, and it's better to go for a target where you have a fair chance than to go for journals and send things out and be rejected or spend half a year revising. Because time is scarce. And an important element I would also like to stress in this, being rejected is not always neutral, right? Because if you are trying more often the same outlet and they always reject you, you build up a track record with them. So be realistic, have a paper really ready before you send it.
Yes, no, what I wanted to add here is also linked with the fact that it helps if one does the homework, so reads what the specific journal is interested in. What was in the previous edition of it, what type of articles are they supporting? Because then you know better also if your research fits with the philosophy and the interest of that journal or not. And at least for myself, it's always useful to see, okay, what was in the previous edition, what was in the one before, to see then how I can fit and introduce something that maybe was not there but complements nicely a discussion that has been started within that particular journal.
Yeah. Maybe to add on this, don't be afraid to also cite other authors that have been published in that journal, right? because it helps to show to the editor, because the editor also has limited knowledge about the research area and research field. But if he sees that you are aware of what other people have been writing in this journal, he thinks that yes, you find the right sources. So that might be, under the radar screen, a good and healthy nudging to use as well. Last but by no means least, when you submit a publication, make sure that it is following the style guide. It's a tedious process to bring the formalities up to speed with the requirements of the journal. There are many journals, they all seem to have different preferences, different approaches. Yes, I know. But if you make the investment in meeting the requirements, the editors will be more pleased and more likely to send it out for review, and reviewers will be more happy to see it spickety span prepared. And yes?
And I think there are two points that maybe did not come clear from this that are still very important in the publication. One, argumentation, and secondly, the conclusion. With regards to the argumentation, and especially when reviewing articles for journals, preparing articles, but also reviewing articles from the international journals, what we notice is that often an article might have a very beautiful pitch, a very nice societal relevance, methodology, but then at the part where the legal analysis or the argumentation should come, it is lacking. It is more describing something, that nice methodology that was promised at the beginning is not implemented in the arguments. So it is very important when Stefan said to have a clear structure with a red line through the paper, in the argumentation to come back to that toolkit of methodology that was promised and to use it in order to show the relevance of the analysis. And the conclusion is often the part that is left for the end, and often is just, I'm now done with the paper, and these are my recommendations.
Yes.
The conclusion needs to follow the problem, answering the research question, the findings, and then also the recommendations. Often conclusions are just offering some recommendations that maybe are completely not linked with what was the analysis, what was the methodology, what was the research question. And that often makes a reviewer stop and say, resubmit or reject it to a paper. So it is very important to have all these building blocks linked to each other in order to have a harmonious puzzle.
Indeed, no? Like when you write a paper, you need to bring your point home. You need to be crisp, short and concise, and make sure that you have a good ending. It's like the dessert. The conclusion, in a way, is one of the most important things, because time is scarce. So when people want to cite you, they read the abstract, they scan through the conclusion, look at the last paragraph in order to see whether the paper is worth reading, right? So in that approach, you better have a good and cunning conclusion, and it's worthwhile to indeed invest the time. Good, ladies and gentlemen, I think we've now been speaking enough, and I think now we would like to give the floor to the audience. Who would like to go first in, let me go, beep, in reflecting and presenting his or her pitch? Who would like to get the microphone?
try to make some reflection of your lecture today. It is about the writing skills and acquisition of the knowledge. Maybe the acquisition of the knowledge we have, but writing skill is another part of our achievement. I mean, I have rejected some, and I remember that the first impression is I have to know the style, the publication style, the format, philosophy, and then if we fail to comply the style, just our writing, our article, it is not. It would not be read by the reviewer. So, but I think writing skill and publishing style is very important, and we have to close to those. So, but how can we achieve the writing skill in article? For me, in bahasa Indonesia is not easy. In English is more difficult for me. And in my practice, I try to write in bahasa Indonesia, and I try to translate to English. To begin writing an article.
I think this is an excellent question. I would normally caution not to write in your mother tongue first and then start translating. The reason is that different languages have very different writing styles. Now, a paper writing style is different from writing an essay. But an essay is sort of an argumented paper that you write that we are trained to write at high school. When I was studying in England, I came from a German educational system. I was able to write a proper German essay, as we would call it. When I tried to do the same in England, in preparing for my A-level exams, the teacher would look at it and rip it apart and say, "Go again, what is this crap?" Because each jurisdiction, each culture has its own ways how to write, right? And some cultures express themselves in a very, shall we say, Baroque style. They are very heavy, very wordy. Others are much more straight to the point. And often English, if you want to get published, you, particularly when you have like 6,000 or 8,000 words, you need to bring your point home. Weigh the words that you use and make sure that you say what you need to say. It's not about having beautiful language only, it's about a flowing narrative that somebody wants to continue to read. And that means that oftentimes it's not about complex language or complex ideas, but it's about explaining the argument and following it through. In Germany, for example, when you want to get published academically, it's about refinement of language. Complexity is fantastic. That's what people find enchanting. In most English-speaking journals, that's probably not the thing, because they want to understand what is behind. They don't want to need to cut through complex language trying to guess what you might be meaning. So translating or writing in your mother tongue and then translating into English might not always be a dominant strategy. At least from a German perspective, I don't think it would work. My Bahasa Indonesia is so poor that I would not even to discern whether that would be a problem or not. But from German, it would not work.
What I wanted to add to this is that, firstly, not two rejections are the same. So you might have a rejection for a journal and you think that is because of the language. You might have a rejection from another journal. Maybe it is not for the language, it is because the topic does not fit with them at all. So if you get the rejections from different outlets, it does not mean that they all have the same problem. But I have been having the same experience as Stefan when people have been writing first in their language and then translating. A few years back, we organized a conference, the University of Groningen, together with the La Sapienza University in Rome and international colleagues. And then we had to make an editorial publication as a special edition of a journal. Many of the Italian colleagues were writing first in Italian and then had it translated. It was very difficult to follow them. The ones that were writing in English from the beginning had a much clearer structure, shorter sentences, but you could go through and understand it, while the ones that were translating their Italian version had these lengthy sentences that in English were not really making sense. And you'd stop after reading the first 3 lines. So then we had to send back for review and review again and again. In an international journal, normally you go through 2 stages. The first stage would be the internal editor that decides if the paper is worth or not to send it to their external reviewers. And if this internal reviewer, editor already thinks that the language is not good, he will not even send it through, even though the content might be very interesting. So today there are also other tools with DIAF or artificial intelligence that helps translating. But if you do not have the right understanding of the language yourself, and you only will trust the artificial intelligence, you might have the same problem as when translating a paper yourself.
Yeah.
So maybe for publishing internationally, investing in proper language editors, we also have them within our university for helping PhD students to get proper language, because our PhD students also come from various countries. That might be a good investment for getting more publications internationally through.
Dr. Stefan, I have a follow-up question from what audience asked into. We have a lot of cases in Indonesia, and they are very important for us, and we are happy to write it. But sometimes maybe it's also relevant for the general public, and how to convince the editor that this case is important, and maybe it's still relevant for the general public internationally. In my cases, we write several papers about, let's say, transfer pricing in automotive industry. It's very important for us, but maybe for Europe it's solved. It's not a problem anymore. So how to make it better, to improve our style so that the editor can at least see what we have done.
Yeah, I sorry. Thank you for this concrete example. I think here the idea could be how make it comparative. Instead of focusing on Indonesia, try to make it comparative and contrast different country experiences. For example, look at what has been the approach that has been followed in some jurisdictions, and point out if the approach is the same or different in Indonesia, and then try to make a suggestion if this different approach might be of relevance in other jurisdictions, in other countries that are comparable to Indonesia. And then you have a contribution to the theory in which, in a large part, you're reflecting on the special case of Indonesia, but you have it embedded into a larger theoretical framework, and you have a larger societal impact that goes beyond Indonesia, is relevant for the European, for example, the European audience, because they see, okay, this is how we've been doing it, now we see a different approach. We see how the new approach is different and why. And it also has relevance for a different audience in other jurisdictions. Perhaps that could be a nice idea to try to get a pitch that is more attractive.
Yes, because also I think there are often special conditions that happen in one country, but that might also happen in other countries around the world. Also in Europe, like the 27 member states, it's not that are uniform in the way of the problems that they face and in the way they implement the law. So making it comparative, maybe already from the identification of the societal problem, identifying what is different here that might happen, might affect other countries as well. And then by using the comparative approach, you bring in new insights on how to deal in the eventuality that this problem is faced elsewhere as well.
For the participant who are here, we have a question from participant online. The first question from a publisher's perspective, which type of paper tends to attract more interest? The one that presents a specific company or industry case study, or the one that discusses issues in a broader and general context?
That's a good question. I would say it depends on the journal, but I think that my impression is that we have journals that are specialized but still broad enough, and that you have fewer journals that are just focused on a specific industry. So it depends on the type and nature of a case study that you're contemplating. But for example, if you have a case study that is only relevant for one specific industry, let's say steel production, probably you might want to broaden the relevance a little bit and make it attractive to a larger group of journals, because explain why a particular journal on industrial policy should be interested in the study of the steel industry, for example. And what you would like to point out in studies, in reports, is that they are oftentimes more descriptive. They are not following a coherent or consistent research question. They might not outline why a certain topic is of high societal relevance, because a journal is interested in the contribution to theory, not just in a description of a topic. So you need to embed it into the appropriate storyline and explain why this study is advancing knowledge. You need to embed it into the specialized theoretical literature, which is something where many reports are falling short, because they're mainly describing they're geared to the policymakers to make points easily accessible, and they are oftentimes quite wordy. So if you try then to turn it into a journal article, it's not that easy. because oftentimes you need to be following a different pitch. I'm not sure if that would be addressing the question that has been posed. I think you need to push the button. Yes.
How can authors make a case study engaging and relevant, given that it often focuses on very specific circumstances and may have limited applicability?
Yeah, I think this is really the crux of the problem, right? Oftentimes we are asked to do contract research, and the fact is not every contract research or report that we like equally lends itself to a journal publication. And in this framework, I probably would follow a different approach. Rather than aiming for a high-flying journal where you are required to show contributions to theory and advancement of theory, I probably would target an editorial volume. Because there are many internationally peer-reviewed outlets, and I would probably then go for something like this, where you are engaging with other experts in the field and suggest that you make a contribution or a special issue to a journal related to the field of your report, because then you are much quicker in adapting the story and the content and the material that you've already written to the needs of the journal that is being produced, because a journal consists of different volumes, so to speak. And if you have a special issue in a journal or in a book on a similar or related topic, I think that would be a more easy way than to try to bring up the quality of a report to a journal article, because they were written with completely different audience in mind.
We also have another question from Jonida. How can authors make an attractive novelty in writing journal participation? Is it right if novelty we state by looking for a different methodology, scope of different respondent, or maybe other valuable indicators from previous study? Which one is the most effective or attractive?
Oh.
This question can be answered on very different levels and dimensions, not because you can create novelty at different parts in your research. Like the novelty can be in the societal relevance, identifying a new problem of the society that nobody was identifying before. You can start there. Or it can be in the research question. The research question can be original, new, something that nobody was asking before. We had this problem for many years, but we never thought of answering this question. Or it can be in the methodology. Nobody thought of comparing the developments in Indonesia with the ones in New Zealand thus far. And from the comparison of these two legal systems, it might be possible to find new things that will help not only these two countries but also others in dealing with this problem.
Yeah.
It can be in the way the methodology is used and in the arguments that are being offered. Or it can be in a conclusion that fits perfectly with the argumentation, with the methodology, answers the research question, but also offers now recommendations for target groups that were not targeted before. Because maybe somebody thought this problem is only relevant for the government, but actually is also very relevant for companies. And nobody thought what companies need to do. Or somebody came up with the idea that regulation is not enough, law is not enough. What about technology? I go in my field of research, but maybe technology can address this problem better than the laws. So the novelty can be at very different layers also about problems that have already been discussed.
Yeah. I would like to second this because it's difficult to be original every time, but particularly when you think of your dissertation, strive for creation of new insights. Try to look at the literature frontier and look what is missing. No? Because if we read 2 months into an area, we have already been reaching the research frontier. It's oftentimes not far away. So particularly as a young PhD student, that is the period of time when you have most opportunity for conducting research. Once you advance, you have less time. As crazy as it sounds, right? Because even PhD students, they complain we don't have enough time for research because they're busy with so many things, right? They need to go to conferences, they need to give guest lectures, they need to review things, they need help out here or there. So they're always very busy, but it's not getting better. So strive as much as possible to advance your knowledge and to push the research frontier, and particularly when you write a dissertation, think a lot about where you would like to create new knowledge, because that is really setting you up for a path towards excellence. No? That you are able to discern and contribute to the generation of new theory. So I think that is an important difference, because you spend 4 years on one topic, so you can really make a contribution. And that is somewhat different oftentimes than for a paper on which you might only be working half a year.
Thank you, Mr. Stefan. This is Jonida. Actually, I want to continue your explanation previously regarding the novelty, and in some cases in Indonesia there is a regulation which is not sufficient for cases in Indonesia. But my question is, how can we make it interest to submit it in international journal? Because it is only happen in Indonesia, and what is the solution? Can we make the comparison or something like that?
I think that the case might be a little bit similar to the transfer pricing story that we had. If you only have something that is relevant for a domestic audience, it's an uphill struggle to get published in a journal that has a broad scope and interest of readers, right? So you need to have the right pitch. You need to explain why they should be excited about the story that you tell. And that is then related with how you frame your research. Only looking at the case, and this is what we do back home, they will say like, yeah, fantastic, but why should we care, right? And that is then, of course, a problem. But if you look at the experience of other jurisdictions, explain what they've been doing, what were the success stories there, and then you compare this with Indonesia and point out like, yeah, but for us, this point was super relevant and it is not recognized in the previous experience or has not been discussed theoretically, then you can point out where your contribution is to the story. Because then you go beyond and frame the case in Indonesia as something unique and relevant for the contribution to knowledge, and perhaps it's even relevant for the development and experience of other jurisdictions. Make it comparative and highlight how you contribute to the development of theory and to the discussion and debate that has been led in other jurisdictions when they were addressing similar problems. No, I think this would be an elegant way. It's not easy because it's an uphill struggle, but it's a good way to do it. But probably it requires a rewrite of the article because you flip the whole story around. Instead of having the story on Indonesia proper, focused centerpiece, it's now a subsidiary element to a different storyline.
And maybe if it is just an application of theory to case, it is not that of interest for a larger audience. But maybe this application has some insights into how can we involve the government, or what did we learn with regards to other focus groups that need to be involved. And then this angle will make it interesting for others as well, because they might not have the same problem, but they might have a similar one.
Yeah.
And then they might get insights on how to make the larger population accept this decision that was done at government level with regards to this problem that was in this country. How did they approach it in Indonesia? Maybe we can have the same for different problems. So as Stefan was saying, like trying to kind of change the structure of the pitch to what is the new thing that you bring, not just the application. So this is the case, this is the law. But what we are bringing new here, it is to show that, I don't know, involving community from the beginning has different results than the community not being involved. Or if it starts from top up, there will not be a lot of understanding and willingness to follow this law. These are our results. Maybe we need to start differently. So looking at these other aspects and make them relevant already and clear in the pitch, like in the societal relevance of your work, will help to have also this type of, that seem like, not that relevant for the rest of the world, cases still relevant.
If I read the journal and they prefer to publish article with the quantitative approach, and my article is use qualitative approach, is it any possibility that I can publish in the journal, or should I choose another journal?
Yeah, I think the safest bet here is give the editor a call, ask, or send your paper out to the editor and ask, hey, would this be of interest to your audience? Describe briefly in an email if, that's what I would do. I would describe briefly the issue, that like short crisp email, hey, I have been working on this and I've been using this methodology to address this. The contribution is this and that's why I think it would be really relevant for your audience, for the readers of the journal. But I'm wondering, is the because the methodology that I'm using is different, would they still fit in your journal? And send it as an annex with the email and simply ask, right? Because then it does not go in the mainstream application framework, because then it's in a particular trajectory, but simply ask the editor what he thinks, right? Short, crisp, not just sending the journal, hey, does it fit? No, explain that you are knowledgeable about what he's doing, why you think it is relevant for his readers, and ask whether the methodological issues are a problem. And this will, if he likes your paper, if he thinks it is fine, the complaints of reviewers, like, yeah, but there's a different methodology, he will wave aside, because before he said, super, we want this. Yeah? So I think I would first, before trying to invest time for a different journal, I would simply ask. A no you have, but a yes you might get.
I would like to share my experience. I'm quite lucky when I tried to submit my first manuscript with the key ones of this journal. The editor, even not in 24 hours, he already stated, hey, we cannot continue to process your manuscript because blah 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 blah. The conclusion is my manuscript is not fit with their
Scope.
I'm lucky, not 24 hours. I don't have to wait until 2 months or 3 months. And then I tried to submit to another without changing anything. And also got 24 hours rejection. Okay. And then I try to manage again and try to understand the requirement from the journal legislative report by seeing the other journal that they already published. And luckily, it's accepted at the moment. At the moment, it's still in the second stage of the report, waiting for the editor decision. My question is, how we find out what is the real reason from the editor to reject? If the editor is not really nice in giving the recommendation or anything else. My second question, I'm also in the middle of trying to write an article based on my research result for my dissertation at the moment. The question is how far, because our dissertation is more than 200 pages, while the article only 15 or 20 pages. How we manage to fit in writing for this kind of article? Thank you.
Do you want to go with the first one?
Maybe regarding your first question, I don't think we will ever, none of us will ever be able to understand what are the reasons of the editors. And just to give you an opposite example, I'm currently peer reviewing for a journal, and we received an article. It is double-blind peer review, so I don't know who is the author, and I also do not know who is the second reviewer. I reviewed the article for the first time, and I said reject because it does not meet the criteria according to me. The second reviewer apparently had also suggested reject, but the editor of the journal suggested resubmit, even though we both as external have been saying reject. I received the article, and yesterday I was again reviewing it. And I again said reject because I don't think the authors have been doing enough to address neither my points nor the ones of the first reviewer. And again, also the other reviewer has been saying reject. And I received this morning the email from the journal saying, on the basis of your review, we are suggesting resubmit. So, I can understand that maybe this journal is keen in having such an article in, and that has already been going twice in the revision. 2 reviewers are continuously saying reject, and the main editor says resubmit. Continue. So I don't think, like, sometimes it depends from their editorial line. What the editor wants to push in for his turn. It can be that that is the topic that he wants, and he's not been receiving that many articles on that.
But then he should find a better reviewer.
I don't think understand what are their reasons for saying reject. It can be many various, as I said earlier, like not two rejections are the same. So I think it really depends. The second question?
Yeah, your second question was intriguing because you were writing a dissertation. Congratulations, well done. And now you want to take parts out for journal articles. That is indeed a good idea, no? To bring your knowledge to a different group of audience. Normally, when you look at your dissertation, you have several things that are relevant. Try to count your dissertation into small sections and see which type of papers you could use, right? Don't try to put everything into one go, keep some powder dry, right? Because if you look at your dissertation, you might have 3, 4, 5 papers that are in there. Take turns, focus on one part, give it a pitch, push it out. Take your time, but push it out. And it's fine not to have everything explained. There's a life after writing a dissertation for more research. There's a life after writing a journal article for more research. Don't worry. The important part is that you have a good story for each of the articles you want to get out.
If you try to condense 200 pages in 15, of course you will not be able to, and you will lose lots of the important findings, analysis that you are doing. But maybe in your research you have a number of sub-research questions that you have been answering in different chapters. So then you can do the cutting into different research questions and findings for that, and then we will be able to have, depending, 4 or 5 different articles on different aspects. We are quite flexible with the continuation, so we can continue with questions. We can continue.
Yeah,
with
I think we have a gentleman here that might want to contribute.
Yeah, with the students that wanted to share their ideas, or we can continue with generative AI and responsible use of it. So, up to you. We can continue with questions, or
Yeah, I think we might need to go because behind you there are also people that.
For the audience online, do you have any question?
Because we.
Okay, I think we can share the question after this session, right?
Yes.
Stefan, if we continue to the next slide. Or for the PhD student here, or for all participants, if you have a draft.
Yeah, because we still have a lot of time, huh? So there are more PhD students. No, but you were cutting short because they're moving up around. Yeah, like we did not want to cut you short, huh? So because we were now doing the round so nicely, so and behind you, Jonida, there are also some gifted PhD students that might have still questions or are working on topics that they might like to present and reflect upon in the group. Okay. Do you want to go up? No. Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Okay, then in the second part of this presentation, we are going to discuss the use of generative AI in research, and especially the responsible use of it. Before starting the discussion, I wanted to ask you, do you use any large language models for your research? sometimes. What does that mean? How do you use it? Sorry?
Papers to the literature studies.
Okay, so you say to help you read all papers and in order to allow you to do the literature study. But how does it help you to read a paper? So a paper you can find online or at the library and you can read it. How do you read it with generative AI?
I usually use it with the reader to help me, like, this kind of paper and I want to read paper. Like, maybe like, when I find a paper in online, full paper, and I need it to be reviewed. So for a better timing, to more concise, I usually use AI to help me review the paper. So like maybe what this paper talk about, something like that.
And do you trust AI?
No.
So then how do you know that what AI suggested to you that are the important points of this paper are the important ones?
Usually I also read the paper again. So then I will make sure that what the AI job is good or not.
Okay, so you kind of do a double job. First you ask the AI, it gives you some points, and then you also read the paper yourself
Yes.
to make sure, so we have kind of the human in the loop, ensuring that the AI is working properly. Okay, thank you. Any other experiences with the use of AI in research?
For grammatical and writing, for grammatical check.
For a grammatical check and for writing. How do you do that?
Usually I use Grammarly and it's installed inside my Microsoft Word, and sometimes if I do like typo, it could give me like suggestion how to rewrite it. And now we move to another platform similar to Grammarly to give like grammatical check.
And this Grammarly, have you read the terms and conditions of use of it?
In terms of like data protection or
In terms of, does it use the material that you have been putting there for training its own system?
I'm not very aware of that, but before they integrate with AI, we assume that C, but now I know that they integrate the AI system into Grammarly, and I'm not sure about that part.
Because one of the problems with AI systems is that they use the materials that you introduce there for training themselves, for offering you better services, but at the same time, those materials that you have seen in a draft and you are working for yourself
And they share it.
might be shared with others. So your original work is not that original anymore before you know it. Because others have been getting suggestions based on your original ideas from the AI in the Grammarly. So we have a reality that we have AI. We have it, we need to use it. No? Like ignoring it, it is not a possibility at the moment. Because it will be like ignoring a big discovery and not benefiting from it. But what it is important for us is to make sure that when we use it in a responsible way. We use it as a tool that helps us. We do not use it as a tool that substitutes us, that can do our job better than we can, because then we are not needed anymore. No? If we trust AI all the time for what we do. So that is what I want to discuss with you, and I hope this discussion is going to be also interactive. And I'm starting with some examples that are more some jokes. When the AI and large language models have been going wrong. With the Google Gemini was asked how to ensure that cheese on pizza is sticky. The answer that they were giving, it was to use some glue, a special type of glue that would not poison you, but it is a glue that you buy when you need to glue tiles or other things with itself. Why did the AI make this mistake? Because some years ago, somebody on Reddit in the US was making this job. If you want cheese to stick on pizza, use this type of glue. And that is where AI was finding its answer for. Buy the glue and use it. Then you will have cheese stick on your pizza. Another example, also coming from the Google Gemini, is when somebody asked about how to increase the level of minerals in his body. And the answer was, eat a stone per day. Rocks have minerals. And you can add them in your diet, including ice cream, cereals, whatever. You can put also small stones. And you will get the needed amount of mineral in your body. Of course, we can laugh about these things, but we also know that people have been following the advice given by AI in various situations. I think most of us here know of a world without internet, without AI. We have been physically going in libraries. We are used with paper work and paper books. But the new generation of students that we have, that are going to be also the next generation of PhD students, the next generation of researchers, professors, whatever, they don't know a life without internet. They do not know a life without artificial intelligence. And they are going as first thing on ChatGPT or on Google. They will not open a vocabulary or an encyclopedia if they do not know something. Wikipedia will have the answer for them. And that's where they find most of the answer, or Google will have the answer for them. Well, AI is being used extensively nowadays also in courts.
Shall I?
We have a famous case of a few years ago where lawyers in the US were preparing their defense before the court with the ChatGPT. And the system was offering as evidence at least 6 very famous cases that were decided by the Supreme Court in the US, and then the lawyer was presenting this before the court, and you can understand also thinking about the system in the US, that it is based on case law, how important these cases were for the judges that were thinking of giving a decision. Only when they went in the courtroom and wanted to look back at these cases and these decisions that were in the favor of that claimant, they were finding that none of the cases was existing. ChatGPT was just making the cases up with real names, with with court numbers, with real things, like everything looking like real, but none of them existed. And currently, the lawyers of that law firm in the US are suspended from the bar and cannot present for a number of years anymore before the court. And they accepted that they used ChatGPT for their answers, and it was clear that everything went wrong. In the Netherlands, we also are having cases of judges that do not go to ask experts, but ask ChatGPT about certain questions that they have. This case over here is it is a famous one because what the judge in Nijmegen had to do is to solve a dispute between two families, two households. One of them had been installing solar panels on the roof, and the other household was building the second floor, which then was bringing shadow into the solar panels. And in order to determine the amount of the damage, the judge wanted to know the lifespan of the solar panels. And instead of asking experts, went to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT said, well, between 25 and 30 years. And the judge decided that the lifespan of the damage is 27.5, between 25 and 30. However, experts are very divided on this. There are some that say 20, there are some that say 30, there are some that say even 40 years. So the decision of the judge, just based on the results that they got from artificial intelligence, is not necessarily the best one for taking a decision about harm in front of the court. And we have been having even more cases, but also situations where the authorities, in this case it's the Data Protection Authority in the Netherlands, that was interfering when DeepSeek, the Chinese artificial intelligence that was suddenly entering the market very quickly, and gained lots of market power very quickly. The authorities said to the people, wait, think of the data you are putting in. Because most of the data might be also personal data. People asked about, the age of a person or about the qualifications of a person. Instead of going in the state archives or whatever, now they do it on ChatGPT. And there are many situations where things can go wrong, including the case of a father of two children, that ChatGPT is suggesting that he's a child murderer. He has been murdering both his sons of the same age as the two sons of his father are. And he has been starting the case against ChatGPT before the courts because the information that is being given about him is wrong. He's a loving father, he has two children of a certain age. They are alive, but ChatGPT suggests that he has been murdering them.
It is very different, I think, when legal process has been interviewed by artificial intelligence, because the process of law cannot apply. It means artificial intelligence, in my view, it's not just technical issues, but also about the truth, and then how can we use artificial intelligence, but maybe someday I will use it. But my question, how can we use the artificial intelligence in ethical aspect, and also we also concern about the truth, so we can use very wisely. What's your
show problems of artificial intelligence. But I'm sure that all of you are going also to tell me positive examples on how to use artificial intelligence. But to answer your question, one issue would be not to use just artificial intelligence off the shelf, as it is ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever that are trained with data massively scraped online, and we know that often what is online is not always true. And then the result can be that the outcome of the prompts that we send to the artificial intelligence can also be untrue. What hospitals are doing, for example, in the healthcare system is to develop their own artificial intelligence, which they train with their own data. And then they keep the system only within their hospital in order to ensure that the results that the doctors receive are not infected by other information that exists online, and you do not have the control if it is true or false. What law enforcement is doing, they are also using lots of artificial intelligence, for example, with regards to when they ask witnesses, instead of recording everything by hand, they have a voice-to-speech recognition artificial intelligence that automatically turns the voice to text and is also able to make summaries. They also do not use off-the-shelf products. They develop their own, trained in their own secure environment. Of course, it is lots of responsibility. Of course, it requires you to, for example, when we talk about voice-to-speech, to have different dialects, to have different ways people talk, slang, how people can use certain words in certain contexts, because when we talk about law enforcement, they are often talking also to criminals or people on the street that are not the most educated in the way in which they express themselves. So they need to train these systems properly. But yeah, one idea to avoid this type of problem is not to have off-the-shelf, open, free artificial intelligence, but properly trained for specific purposes, where it is clear what the input is in order to receive the output. But while starting with this type of problems, I also do not want to be completely negative, because there are also lots of positive examples on the use of artificial intelligence. And some of these examples you were also sharing here at the beginning. One of you said that producing text summaries, that is how I use artificial intelligence. Another one said for improving the language. That is another way of using artificial intelligence. Sometimes the amount of information that might be available can be very large, and it is impossible for us to personally read it unless we have a whole year, let's say, for writing a paper or dealing with this material. Or other time it can help to quickly create code for analyzing specific data that are available, because maybe also many of you do lots of empirical research on basis of real data sets that are being collected, and artificial intelligence can help in order to understand patterns within this data and help to find your own conclusions. So artificial intelligence is a tool, and it is a tool that can help us. But we need to be aware also of the risks that come with artificial intelligence. And maybe we can talk about different risks. One of them has to do with all the fake news that is online. Because how is artificial intelligence trained? On basis of very large data sets. And in order to access all these very large data sets, they are online. Think about social media. Many people write on social media, comment, write their ideas, etc. They are not necessarily always the truth. And we also know that fake news spreads much quicker and much easier than real news somehow. There are studies that show that people are more willing to spread and to share fake news, sometimes intentionally, but sometimes also unintentionally, sometimes because it might just sound funny. Eat a stone per day to increase your level of minerals in your body. But the artificial intelligence will not understand that that is a joke, because it is a machine. And so more this information circulates, more it thinks that it is mainstream knowledge. And will offer it to others that maybe do not have the thinking and reflecting capacity that we have. So apart the risks with spreading fake news, the second risk has to do with infringing copyright or other intellectual property rights. Artificial intelligence is trained on the basis of information that is available online. Also, many articles that we write are open access. But the fact that people can read this article openly does not mean that I'm giving away my copyrights, because the copyright is much broader. I need to be mentioned, the content of my idea should not be distorted, should not be used in ways that I do not approve, etc. So we have lots of different aspects with copyright. Artificial intelligence does not understand this. So in the input that they receive, they scrap all information that is available freely online. But in your experience, the best papers, do you read them from free outlets or from those journals for which your library may be, or you pay a subscription? Often, the best research is in books that are not available online, or in journals that might be available online, but we have to pay a fee. Artificial intelligence does not have access to them. It has only access to whatever is free online. So often, also the results do not come from the best research available. That is something to keep in mind. And this has to do with the output. So the problem, the copyright problem with artificial intelligence, we have it both in the input but also in the output that we receive from artificial intelligence. Because on the basis of our prompts, it often suggesting certain answers. We do not know from where this answer is coming. So we might, without intention, violate the copyright of others if we would use that answer that the large language model that we use gave to us. Then there is the problem of data, or another problem linked with copyright also comes from the fact that many people are entering, for example, their research in artificial intelligence tool in order to make a summary, to translate it, etc. And the artificial intelligence will use whatever you are giving to it for answering questions of others. So it is going to infringe your copyright. Or when you put articles of others in, an article that maybe artificial intelligence does not have access by itself because it is paid, or you were making pictures from a book and then you feed the artificial intelligence with it, and then you use it for somebody else. So then you are contributing into violating intellectual property rights while using artificial intelligence. There can be problems with privacy and data protection. Introducing information about people and then asking to make a summary about that person, or introducing the CV of a person in and asking to make a summary or a short representation of that person, or asking about the address of that person, or introducing an address and asking who lives at that address. So there are many situations when you might intentionally or unintentionally violate data protection. And last but not least comes the risk of unethical research. Think of the lawyers that were preparing their defense for their client with ChatGPT. They were introducing all the facts of the case. They were feeding the system with the facts in order to receive a nice speech for the judge to defend their client. So they are sharing information that might not only violate data protection and privacy, but also the ethical rules that come there from the rules of the profession. Because we know lawyers have a duty of confidentiality. The doctors as well have a duty of confidentiality. And now we see that they are more and more introducing certain also values that they receive from analysis of patients in order to understand what type of problem the patient might have. They can do it if the AI is internal of the hospital. It is not linked with the outside world, and the information is not shared with the outside world. But if they would use just generative AI, one of the commonly used free artificial intelligence systems, they are violating the rights of their patient, client, whatever, and they are conducting unethical research by sharing this information with others. These are not the only risks that are linked with the use of artificial intelligence. There are other risks. At the moment we see more and more artificial intelligence that is being created. At the beginning we started with OpenAI and then Gemini, and then from China came DeepSeek. So there are just some companies that are gathering all our ideas. Because what many researchers are doing is they have an idea and then they ask artificial intelligence, oh, is this worth, or how do I continue from here? In this way, OpenAI gathers the ideas of millions of researchers every day and concentrates them and can do much more with it, because we know that the power is always in what you can do with the data. And these companies know very well what they can do on the data. There is not without reason that all these companies that offer to us free services are at the moment owned by the richest people in the world. How are they making the money if we are not paying them? By exploiting us, our data in different ways. Advertisements, of course, can be one thing, but now with artificial intelligence also gathering all sorts of new ideas, concentrating them, it is one of the risks when using these open artificial intelligence tools in doing your research. And then there is the harm to research integrity that is pretty much linked with what was discussed with regards to copyright. But also think of you struggling to write an article, sharing parts of it with artificial intelligence, but also just finishing an article, but the journal is asking for 6,000 words, you were writing 9,000, so you put the article for shortening it in 2 minutes. and your article is not original anymore. Because your ideas are being shared, you don't know with whom and where. So, when using AI in doing research, it is good to keep in mind all this type of potential risks that might come from this tool that might be very beneficial for certain aspects. And there are also a number of limitations. The most common ones, these are just the most common ones, not all of them, because then we can take days to talk about the limitations of AI, but for us as researchers, one of the limitations is linked with the training set of the AI. We might think that AI, it's called artificial intelligence, is an intelligent system that understands our question and that's how it gives the answer. No, artificial intelligence and large language model have been trained on large data sets in order to understand what word should come after a specific word. So they don't necessarily understand our question. What they do is to create sentences based on string of words that in most of the cases come one after the other in the papers, in the data sets that they have been using for training the system. And that's why sometimes we receive an answer that makes sense. Other times we might receive an answer that we think maybe it does not make that much sense. In addition, apart from the fact that the databases might be not complete, might be biased, sometimes also our prompts might be biased. And then the answer comes as a result of our biased prompt. In addition, generative AI has been set in such a way that even if you yourself will introduce the same prompt at different points of time, you will receive completely different answers. So it's not a standard answer. But also if you and I, at the same moment, will introduce the same prompt, we will also receive different answers. Why? Because they link their answer to the data profiling that they have been doing to us. They already know what are our interests, what is our history in searching internet pages. So when doing research and getting an answer from artificial intelligence, that is not a bulletproof answer. It can be linked to various results and variables. Often, it invents citations. If you have an answer and then you say like, oh, but I know that this is coming from someone, can you please tell me where does this phrase come from? Or it will give you an answer that sounds perfect, but if you go and try to find the original source, most of the cases you will find that the original source does not exist. It has been invented. How has it been invented? As I said, what the system tries to do is a string of words depending on probability. So after this word might come this. So I'm putting Weishaar, sometimes Milaj comes behind, and can be Weishaar, Milaj, Jonida, or Weishaar, Stefan, depending also on our search history. So it's always important to double check if the original sources exist or not.
Yeah.
And in many cases, it hallucinates. It gives answers that we aren't able to understand why. We cannot interpret why it gives us a certain answer because it is completely black box. The AI that is available for free online about the databases that were used for training it. So we cannot interpret why it gave us this answer and why not another. But, as I said at the beginning, it is a tool. We have it there, we need to use it, we can use it, and what's important is to use it in a responsible way. The European Research Agency last year was coming with a number of guidelines on how to responsibly use artificial intelligence for your research. And these guidelines are based on 4 principles. The first one is about the reliability of research. So even if you use artificial intelligence at different points of your research, it is important to ensure that your pitch at the beginning, the societal relevance, your research question, your methodology, your argumentation, your conclusion, your recommendations are checked and are written down by you that follow a certain line, because otherwise your research becomes completely unreliable. In one of my courses, it's a master course in data-driven innovation, I do an experiment with the students every year. I ask them to write their own paper on a very small topic, and then I ask them to write the same paper on the basis of one of the generative AI systems that they are used and they use. And then to compare the results. So they show me the prompts. So first they have their paper, what is their research question, the methodology they use, their analysis, their conclusion, and then they try to do the same steps with ChatGPT or Claudine, etc. And what they find out is that artificial intelligence always brings them in different ways and paths that they were not thinking of exploring. And they find them at the beginning very innovative. But then they also realize that why the artificial intelligence is doing this is because sometimes, even though they need to assess the legislation in the European Union, the sources or the inspiration of the answer that was coming from artificial intelligence comes from an article of a law in California. And that's why then the direction of their paper went a completely different way. Because maybe there is a paper that has been explored by the artificial intelligence in the database that refers to a law with a similar name, but that exists in completely different jurisdiction, in a completely different article. Or refers them to articles of European law that when they go back to check, the articles do not exist. And I find this type of experiment always useful, and the students find it useful as well, because often during their bachelor, for their bachelor thesis, when they have to write papers for other courses, they use artificial intelligence. They never accept that they do it, but we know that they use it. And they know that they use it. But what they realize now is that when they know the content themselves, because they did their own research, then they are able to contradict artificial intelligence and to find the problems. If they would not know the content, most likely they would go with artificial intelligence and they would produce content that looks very nice, is written with beautiful language, might follow a nice structure, but that one can very easily tear apart, because if you are knowledgeable about the law, about the case law, about the literature, you know that what is written there sounds nice, but does not exist. The second principle that the European Research Agency was identifying has to do with honesty. We have this tool, let us use it, but for using it, introduce it already in your methodology. Explain how you used it. Explain that you used it for refining the language. Explain that you used it for, I don't know, for asking a question. Make sure to be transparent, to keep your prompts and the answer that you received on that specific day from ChatGPT, so that if somebody is going to ask how you reached the conclusion, then you can explain how. This does not mean that when you ask the same question to ChatGPT, the answer will be the same. The answer might be different. But if you keep your records, then you are able to transparently show how you were forming your opinion. What is the information that was available to you at the moment in which you were writing. There are some international journals at the moment that explicitly ask if you are using artificial intelligence, make it clear how you use it. So introduce it in your methodology, explain how you made use of artificial intelligence for your article. The same also in writing projects. The European Commission is now, for many projects, giving the guidelines. If you use artificial intelligence, do this, don't do this, don't do this. And explain also what tool did you use. The next principle is linked with respect. Sometimes a colleague might give you a paper so that you give the opinion. What do you think? It's a draft paper or a draft chapter. And you might say, oh, I don't have now the time to read this 40 pages. Let me just very quickly put it on artificial intelligence, get a summary or some remarks and send it to my colleagues. It might happen. We are all humans, we need to cut corners. But what might happen is that you are causing a problem to your colleague because his paper will not be original anymore. You will violate unintentionally his copyright. So be aware of this type of things. People are now also using artificial intelligence for reviewing papers for journals because they don't have the time to review these papers. Or when reviewing grant applications, there might be an original idea. The same problems might occur. Problems with copyright, problems with data protection, problems with the integrity of the research. And of course also problems with concentrating the knowledge in the few companies that own this type of tools. And the last principle, it has to do with accountability. Artificial intelligence is not an author. The author is always a human. The author will always be you. You are the ones that will be accountable for your research and for what you have been producing. If you read the terms and conditions of any of the artificial intelligence tools that you use, you will find there very clearly that they say they are not responsible for any copyright infringements. You are, even though you might trust them, and even though you send the prompt to them, you did not ask them to infringe copyright. But it is your responsibility to make sure that you recognize properly the work of others, cite properly, not only when an exact phrase has been taken from some work, but also when paraphrasing or summarizing work of others, and that is then being used in your own work. So, on the basis of these principles, there are a number of general recommendations that that follow up. The first one has to do with the responsibility. Can you go back to the slide? Yeah. So, always keep it in mind. If you use artificial intelligence or not, you are the one that will remain responsible for your scientific output. Not the artificial intelligence. You. Secondly, be transparent. If you decide to use it, make it clear how you use it in your research. Thirdly, pay attention to potential infringements of intellectual property, potential infringements of data protection, potential infringements of confidentiality when you enter any prompts, when you enter any information and you feed the system by yourself. Then there might be other national laws, international laws or European laws linked to it. So you are responsible for whatever is being done. When using artificial intelligence, keep all this in mind. 2-3 years ago, when the general large language models were introduced, many universities had their policy, do not use artificial intelligence. Now it is not anymore the case. Many are saying, use it, but use it responsibly. And then it has...
Where are you?
Number 5.
Number 5.
And then the next point has to do with the fact that technology is advancing very quickly. And artificial intelligence is advancing very quickly. We know when it was introduced from today to tomorrow, but we also know that their functions are continuously changing. So make sure to train yourself on what is new with the artificial intelligence models that you use, because then you can take the best out of it and also use it better for your benefit. So always continuously, I think for everybody that is always the thing we learn every day, but also especially for us as researchers, we learn every day till our last day, and that is also with regards to the use of artificial intelligence. And don't use it with regards to sensitive information. Do not, especially when you might cause harm to others. If you are asked from an international journal to review a paper and you just put it on artificial intelligence, you don't know how the artificial intelligence took their conclusion. You don't know if it was biased. As a human, of course, we might also be biased, we all are, but it is still our agency, our thinking process. We don't know how artificial intelligence understands certain aspects. So it is important to keep this in mind. Some colleagues at our Faculty of Engineering were having a very interesting example on an artificial model that they are creating. They have a robot that they want to give tasks for bringing documents within the building. and this robot gets the tasks on basis of artificial intelligence. What they were noticing is that if they tell the robot to bring a request from an employee for some days of holiday to the Human Resources Office, and in that faculty there are two people sitting in the Human Resources room, a male and a female. They notice that the robot, when a request comes from a female, goes and gives the information to the female worker. When the request comes from the male, the robot goes to the male worker, even though it has not been trained for this from the researchers themselves. But it has been making the information on the basis of other databases that we do not know that it has been used. Furthermore, if the request for holiday comes from a female that maybe is pregnant, what they have noticed is that the robot is also changing the route through the faculty. It's going through these corridors with less people to go to the same office, because it's thinking that the information is more confidential. The researchers do not know why it is making these links, because they think they have not trained it in doing this. And that is something that for us, when using artificial intelligence, is often unclear, because artificial intelligence for us is a black box. We don't know why it reaches certain conclusions and why it gives certain results. So that is something always to keep in mind. But this is what I had to say in general with regards to the responsible use of artificial intelligence and with regards to the European Research Agency. Personally, my advice, especially to young researchers, would be do not start to depend from artificial intelligence, because it is very easy to become dependent on them. Because we have limited time at disposition, and within this limited time we can only read limited papers. Artificial intelligence, on the other side, is having large databases that would require us a whole lifetime to scrutinize. And then we would feel that we can never match up, we can never do the same thing. But do we need to read everything in order to form our opinion? We don't. And we cannot be aware of every paper that has been written in every country around the world. And rightly so. I don't think we need to. And as your colleague said, she said, I'm asking for the summary, but I also read the paper myself. I think that is a very important point, because if we would only read the summaries, we would lose so much, we will miss so much from the proper research and argumentation that other scholars have been doing. And we will miss big learning opportunities. So use artificial intelligence as a tool to help you become a better researcher. Don't use it as a tool that will substitute you as a researcher. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonida. We have a question and comment in chat box that we bring for us from one advisor. But nowadays, in fact, very many people in Indonesia maybe believe more and follow what the AI talking with them. It's also a problem for Gen Z. Maybe they also believe and trust AI the news, their breakthrough and so on. What do you think about it? And also, you continue, for example, what my client debate with me about taxation nowadays, the statement that the people from the answer from AI.
What do I think about it? I think the same as before. I think we need need to use AI in a responsible way. We cannot trust everything that AI is saying. In order not to trust everything that the AI is saying, we need to have the knowledge. Because if we do not have the knowledge, we will trust it. There were now famous cases, maybe not about research, but unfortunate cases, where people that were feeling depressed were asking AI on how to solve their problems, and the suggestion was to commit suicide. Also offering different suggestions on how to better commit it. And that is the case that the guy committed a suicide following exactly the steps that AI offered to me. Many people feel lonely. Many people are using AI also as in discussions, as a part of the conversation. But we need to be aware of the fact that the answers that we receive from the AI are, we don't have on the other side an intelligence in the meaning that it understands our question and it makes our answer. No, it understands how words can work nicely one after the other on the basis of the databases that it has, and on the basis of that it gives us the answer, on the basis of profiling us and seeing what is our search history online. So then it knows what are our interests and then tries to link words in that way. So these are things that we need to keep in mind. And in 2021, I was giving a presentation online here in Indonesia at the Faculty of Law, and at that time the data protection law was, I think, not yet introduced, but at the moment of being introduced. I think now you also have a data protection law in Indonesia that has been following to a certain extent the European General Data Protection Regulation. And regarding the question about advising clients and taxation, the issue is what type of AI are you using? If you are using open, online, free systems, then the answers you are getting are not always the correct ones. Some of us nowadays still remember how to answer properly and might be able to detect the problems in an answer that was generated from AI, and we might be able to modify it. In a few years, we will forget that if we continuously use AI. So it is important, firstly, not to use off-the-shelf systems, and secondly, to keep ourselves trained to be able to understand when an answer is correct or not. And thirdly, not to share sensitive information of our clients online, because we might cause other problems to them that we don't know. I don't know if I answered the question.
Okay, maybe you can move to other comment and question. From Rizka, let me read for us. AI is the cheapest software for data analysis. If we have some data set in the fact, just run the AI for regression analysis, for example, and we will get the result plus interpretation. This can be done with free version of ChatGPT. No need to buy SPSS or other expensive data analysis software. What do you think about AI for just a tool for data analysis?
I think using the free version of ChatGPT is not safe. It is completely not safe. And we have seen it also with one of our PhD students. That is exactly what he was doing. He was getting the data from the courts and then putting it to the AI in order to create the graph. And the graph was not making, and also the interpretation of the graph. And they were not matching. But you understand that it is not matching, if you have some knowledge, and if you are critically questioning. By himself, he did not question it, because for him it was so easy. He did it, he had a beautiful graph, nice colors, and he was presenting it. And people with different background that look at it with a very objective eye are then able to question, but how is it possible that you say it went increasing while your graph is looking like this, or this type of things, and you do not know what other data that free version has been putting together in order to give the answer. So I think it is very dangerous, and I think the responsibility is with you, not with the ChatGPT. So make sure to double check the results.
Also, we have a follow-up comment from Isaac. Sorry, can we find out a book that could explain or educate our children and Gen Z? I mean that the book can tell them the problem of AI, the problem of use AI too much and trust more AI than the other tools. Thank you.
Unfortunately, no. Not yet. We cannot find this book. And one of the reasons is because it is developing very quickly. It is difficult to cut the moment of time to be able to explain it, because by the time we write that book, the system is working completely differently. So in order, of course, we need more literacy. We need people to understand more about the responsible use of the AI. But do we have such a book at the moment? I have not been able to find it. But I completely agree that both our children and Generation Z will benefit a lot from that, and we as well.
If I may intervene on this, looking at how our students are digesting information and how they engage with books is different than how we have been learning how to engage with books. Like normally when we have a book, we start in chapter 1 and read it till the end. That's how we read our first books, right? Now, when we have a specific question, we know to which chapter we need to jump because we have an overview of the knowledge. We know the literature landscape, we know what is relevant for us. Nowadays, our students are not having books. They are looking at PDFs. They search via Control F for specific terms. So they come up with questions because they have not started with chapter 1 in a new textbook. And as a consequence, they don't understand what they read. They take snippets out, try to challenge you on this without having the basic background of previous chapters. So I'm afraid a book would not be very accessible to the youngsters nowadays because they always search everything on TikTok and YouTube. So I'm afraid the problem is even bigger than what we hope it would be at this stage. That's just my 5 cents of being an academic and teaching.
And I don't know if it is your experience as well, but often when the students approach us, they do not ask anymore, what book can I find at the library to understand this? But they ask,
do you have a video?
Do you have a video on YouTube or a podcast or something where I can see this thing?
3 minutes.
And I think the colleague online is suggesting a book, TikTok. But I think there are also comics that show to children some of the problems of using internet on data protection and ethics. There is a nice comic that has been developed by the European Data Protection Supervisor Office. Like you find some aspects of it to make you aware about problems, but we do not have a fully fledged book that can explain all the details.
Thank you, Madam. Previously, you already explained about the free version of AI. Do you have any experience about the premium one or the other version?
With different versions of. To be very honest with you, I don't use AI. I ask my students to use AI to compare, to learn. But I don't use AI. Why? Because the first time that I went in the system, it asked my consent for using personal data. And I am a privacy and data protection lawyer. And I tend not to give that consent before reading all the privacy policy. Then it normally takes you hours. And I did not have the time. So I'm not kicking the box. I have experience with the use of AI in safe environments. In the hospital, because I do research together with our medical center, a university medical center, and they are using now AI for many administrative tasks, but also for the doctors in order to communicate with the patients, both in chatbots, also during the normal doctor-patient conversation. And I have also experience with the use of AI in law enforcement, because that has been one of my first fields of research. And in both ways, even though we have been using very safe AI trained with databases that were at our knowledge, that were coming from official institutions, we weren't able to interpret lots of the results when asking questions to the AI. Often, for example, with one part of the study had to do with feeding the AI with pictures on polyps from the colon of patients in order to detect early developments of polyps in other patients. And because the AI, in order to be trained, needs huge amounts of data, and the hospital in itself does not have this huge amount, then they were also creating lots of synthetic data, so based on the real ones, but then fake data for training the AI. In some cases, it is super useful because it is able to detect early stages of polyps, so that you can treat the patient earlier before a doctor with an eye in the pictures is able to detect it. There were other cases in which it was missing the information, and we do not know why. We cannot explain why at the moment.
This is a moment. We're coming about this question. Again, said, shouldn't rely on ChatGPT, but using it wisely can make learning faster, smarter, and more meaningful.
I completely agree with that. But how do we ensure that? It is very difficult. Because, for example, our son is 10 years old. We try at home to limit his screen time. We say half an hour. And then when he comes from school, we ask him, what were you doing at school? And they had their emails they were checking, their presentations they prepare online. He needed to do research on different countries in the world. He was doing that all online. And then was coming up with some information about some countries that we're saying, but really, where did you learn this from? Like it's not really true.
Strange. Yeah.
It is strange. But they are left to do this research already from an earlier age in uncontrolled environments. And they take pieces of information that they do not have, for example, the historical timeline. The internet, Google or now also when you just use Google, the first result that comes is from AI, an answer that you get from AI. Making links that we would have not been making on the basis of that little that we knew ourselves. So it becomes very difficult to make. We should not let Gen Z to only get their information from AI, but we need to do this already in the elementary school, secondary school, high school, and university.
Maybe one element that I would like to stress and encourage young researchers that get an advice for a paper. We've heard that people read the papers, or at least some of us do, then that they are suggested by large language models. I cannot stress this point enough, because one of my PhD students was citing a paper with one good argument, but it was a paper that we happen to know. And we were asking, it's like, yeah, but you use this argument, it's nice that you cite this author, but why don't you cite this author in this point, in this point, in that point as well? Because in that article, there are more relevant points for the story that you're telling. So if you are suggested an article or a book, please make sure, and you cite it, please make sure that whatever you cite, you've been studying. Not just Control F, is the sentence that I want to cite in there? Does the article exist in the first place? No. Make sure that you read the whole thing so that you know what is in. So not that you say, oh, this author has in this article been writing against point A, while actually the author is defending point B. Make sure that you are very certain about all the building blocks that you use in your story.
For the participant present in this room, do you still have any question?
Do you have any more? No.
Or when you call PhD student or academian person here, if you want to ask something about your paper, you want to consult, maybe this is the time.
I have one more question about you explained previously about the reviewer. The reviewer also can use AI to check our article. How that condition?
Well, they could, but whether it's allowed is a different thing.
That is the issue. They shouldn't. So apparently, some of them do.
Yeah.
And that was highlighted in the report of the European Research Agency last year. And one of the recommendations is do not do it.
Yeah.
Because you are also causing problems to the others, so to the one that you are reviewing.
Yeah.
So you should not do it.
Yeah. And the journals will oftentimes tell you whether you're allowed to or not. So when you ask, could you please review, they tell you also you're not allowed to put it online.
We still have 25 minutes. So anybody who wants to share something or to consult or to comment? I think we have reached the end of the session because I think nobody raised their hand, or maybe they prefer to talk after the session.
Yes,
Or
yes.
condition, situation. So I think thank you for this session. Now I will pass on to our beloved MC. Thank you.
Yes, and also on our behalf, thank you very much for your time, for your engagement, and for your excellent questions. I think we have had a lovely morning with lots of intellectual stimulus for us as well. Thank you so much for all your time and engagement. Thank you. Did you sign?
Thank you, Professor Stefan. This is Jonida and Maria. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Department of Fiscal Administration, Faculty of Administrative Science of the University of Indonesia, expresses our gratitude to Professor Stefan Weishaar and Mrs. Jonida Milaj-Weishaar for sending us our esteemed speakers and sharing their invaluable expertise throughout the event of publication thematic clinic. A special thank you also goes to Ms. Dr. Maria Tambunan, Regional of Administrative Science, Assistant Economics, for her excellent moderation, ensuring the session was successful and interactive.
We also want to sincerely thank all participants for your time, enthusiasm, and active engagement during the event. To express our gratitude to our distinguished speakers and moderator, we will now proceed with the handover of certificates of appreciation and souvenirs. First, a certificate of appreciation and a souvenir will be given to Professor Stefan Weishaar as the speaker for today, and we kindly ask Mrs. Dr. Indayati, Master of Science, to give the certificate. Thank you for your valuable insights and expertise, Professor. We also ask for permission to take the commendation. Thank you, Professor Stefan and Lina.
Next, a certificate of appreciation and souvenir will be given to Mrs. Jonida Milaj-Weishaar, Master of Law, Doctor of Philosophy, as our speaker for today. And we kindly ask Mrs. Dr. Mina Hayu, Master of Science, to give the certificate. Thank you for your valuable insight and expertise, Mrs. Jonida. We also ask for permission to collect the documentation